Let's load our first dataset. We'll be loading in the penguins dataset as CSV and parsing it using JavaScript and displaying the first row of it in JSON format like this. I'll be looking at the Palmer Penguins dataset, which is a great intro dataset for data exploration and visualization. It's about penguins, as in birds. There are different species: chinstrap, gentoo, and Adele? Adelaide? I don't know how to say that. The bill length is this length here, and the bill depth is this vertical distance. Inside this GitHub repository, in a subfolder, there is this file, penguins.csv. It's a text file in CSV format. Comma-separated values is a text file format that uses commas to separate values. In its raw form, it is a text file where the first row is what's called the header row. This contains the column names, and the subsequent lines of this file contain the actual rows of data, and they match up. So the species of this one is Adelaide, and the island is this one, and the bill length is this number, and so on. You can open this kind of a file in Excel or other spreadsheet tools, and you can export spreadsheets to this format. GitHub has this nice preview for CSV files that shows it as a table. First, let's grab the raw data. I'll use Control-A to select all this text and Control-C to copy it. Next, I'll fork this Hello World example, and I'll call it Penguins. I'll open the editor and create a new file, and I'll call it data.csv. In this file, I'm going to use Control-V to paste this data. Now, in index.js, we can actually use the syntax import data from /data.csv. And to see if it worked, we can say console.log data and use Shift-Enter to run it. To see the output of console.log, we can open up the developer tools and go to the console, and we can see that in fact it worked. It is this array of objects. This one penguin here has a bill depth of 18.7. It's a male penguin from this island. And we have the same representation for each of the rows. We can show this in the output by using a function called json.stringify. This will give us a string representation in JSON of this data. Now, it's not very pretty because it's all one line. We can make this JSON indented by passing as the second argument null and as the third argument 2, which is the indentation. It's not using the indentation because it's inside of a div, but if we put it inside of a pre-element, which is for pre-formatted text, then it should look pretty nice. Okay, that sort of worked. Let me get rid of this text align center. And there it is. It's showing the stringified data. Oh, I see it's indented because it's using the white space here. All right, and I'll just make the size a little bigger here so we can see one row clearly. And I'll just refactor this code a little bit. I'll pull this out into a variable called JSON. And I really just want to see the first row, so we can just access the first row like that. And by the way, this syntax here, import data from /data.csv, it's enabled by this rollup plugin called rollup.dsv. And rollup, by the way, is the build tool that VizHub uses internally, and it's also used by many popular JavaScript build tools, including Vite. So you can use this if you want to write similar code outside of VizHub. So that's basically how you can load in data. But the thing is, we are not parsing this data because the numbers here are still strings. If we want to use this in a data visualization or any kind of analysis, we're going to want to parse these numbers into strings. And here's how we can do that. We can iterate over each row of the data with this for loop here, and we can parse the fields that are numbers into numbers by mutating these objects, because after all, these are JavaScript objects. We can say d.billLengthMM equals plus d.billLengthMM. And now you can see that it's represented as a number, not a string. This is the unary plus operator of JavaScript, which is a pretty common way of parsing strings into numbers. Now we can do the same for these other fields like build depth, flipper length, and body mass. And now when we run this, we can see that all of these fields are parsed as numbers. Lastly, I'm going to say export data so that this data can be imported by other vizzes and used. This export relates to setting a custom URL. I'll set it to be penguins. That way we will be able to import it from @current/penguins. And I'll save that. And to wrap up, I'll just update the README by deleting the original content. I'll say the penguins dataset and add a link to this file here. And I'd like to leave you with a challenge. Your challenge is to find 3 datasets on a topic you are interested in. For each of those, fork this viz and replace the data. For that, you'll have to find it as a CSV file. Change the code to parse the quantitative attributes into numbers. Quantitative attributes are attributes or columns that are essentially numbers. And then update readme.md to indicate and link to the original data source. Good luck!